falling in love with this man was the easy part.
His morals, his integrity, from what I knew of him, he just always did the right thing, and that was really important to me.
They went to the same high school in Alabama, but didn't start dating until Emily was finishing law school. At that point, the man who would eventually become her husband was already commissioned as an officer in the Army. The two said their I-dos after Emily graduated.
And then I moved out to Texas, and then moved to Georgia a year later, and then moved here a year later.
It's a life that's not all that conducive to having the career Emily imagined and studied so hard to build. According to the Military Spouse Employment Report, wives of the men in the armed forces are 3 times more likely to be unemployed, regardless of age or education.
So it's a big challenge, and it makes me feel better that it's not just me.
The ones that are employed make on average 38% less than their civilian counterparts. The biggest reason, frequent moves, known in the military as a PCS, or permanent change in station.
The amount of time that somebody is with a job is very, very important nowadays. So I think that's one thing that military spouses really struggle with quite a bit.
Tammy Fogel, the chair of Colorado Springs Military Spouse Career Committee, acknowledges the obstacles these wives face. But it's her job to help spouses network and find jobs.
Of course, we can't guarantee that we're going to get them a job, but I know at least here in Colorado Springs, we're going to do our darn best to try to do it.
Gaps in Emily's resume have certainly not gone unnoticed by potential employers.
I definitely think it's just been a factor. Nobody has told me to my face necessarily that the reason I wasn't hired was because I'll be moving, but I am always honest with employers.
The average civilian woman with Emily's education makes more than $97,000 a year. But if they're a military spouse, that salary drops to just under $54,000. Of course, that's if they're employed.
And I have taken jobs that aren't in my field. I've done that three jobs actually, and it just hasn't been a good fit for me.
Those jobs will make do in the meantime, a word that leaves an unpleasant taste on Emily's lips.
My whole life right now as a military spouse is meantime. You know, I've talked to other military spouses too, and they're like, you just really have to be careful, otherwise you just wait your life away.
More than 80% of military wives are underemployed when you factor in their education and experience.
They end up being underemployed. They just have to kind of take a job that might be a little bit until they settle. Maybe their husbands are done with the military. I think it's hard. It's just something that they do sacrifice, you're right.
Knowing what you know now, would you go to law school?
I have thought that. I don't know the answer to that question. I would, if I knew that I was going to marry military and be a military spouse, I probably wouldn't have gone to law school just because they're so incompatible.
Emily's just now coming to terms with the idea she may never work as a lawyer, so she finds satisfaction in other endeavors.
I volunteer at the courthouse here, I volunteer at my church, I volunteer with my husband's Army unit, and I volunteer with a women's organization. I pour myself into that, and it is fulfilling.
And now, 3 years into their marriage, Emily is trying her best to reframe her perspective instead of counting the costs.
Some of my friends have said, look at it as an adventure, and that's a good way to look at it.